From betrayal to reunion, my journey with family and community. I'm Callum Hayes, a 48-year-old internal auditor living in Houston, Texas. Picture yourself standing in a lavish mansion, crystal chandeliers, sparkling champagne glasses, clinking, and the scent of expensive perfume lingering in the air. This was my brother Morgan's 50th birthday party at the upscale Highland Village. I walked in wearing a slightly outdated navy suit, feeling like a stranger in my own family. But in a single moment, everything changed. A champagne bottle shattered over my head. Blood streamed down my face, and the room fell silent. That was the price I paid for refusing to surrender my $450,000 apartment. Yet this story isn't just about betrayal. It's about how I transformed pain into hope, a fractured family into a united community. Join me in exploring this journey because I promise it'll keep you hooked. Have you ever been betrayed by those closest to you? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. I grew up in a family where money and status were everything. Hayes Capital Holdings, my father's company, was the center of it all. My brother Morgan was the shining star, confident, impeccably dressed, always commanding attention. His wife Iris, with her sharp smile and calculating eyes, stood by his side. Then there was Walter, my cousin, a quiet shadow who appeared at just the right moment to make things worse. I, on the other hand, was the odd one out in their perfect picture. I lived a simpler life, working at an auditing firm, owning a Midtown apartment, and trying to steer clear of family drama. But that night at Morgan's birthday party, there was no escaping it. The party was held at the Highland Village mansion, where every brick seemed to exude wealth. I entered, greeted by polite but cold nods from guests. Morgan stood under a floral arch, raising a whiskey glass in a perfunctory toast to me. Iris, in a striking red dress, smiled, but her eyes said I wasn't welcome. I made my way to the bar, grabbed a champagne flute, and tried to blend in. Then Morgan pulled me into a small room filled with the scent of oak and leather. He poured me a bourbon, raised his glass, and said, "To family." I reciprocated, but unease crept in. Morgan got straight to the point. He wanted me to hand over my Midtown apartment. "It'll help consolidate family assets," he said, as if it were obvious. Iris appeared, adding in a sweet but icy tone, "Callum, think of the family." I refused, explaining it was my home, where I'd built my life. The air grew tense. I felt Walter's gaze from the corner like a wolf stalking prey. Then, without warning, Walter stepped forward, grabbed a champagne bottle from the table, and smashed it over my head. Glass shattered, blood dripped down my forehead, and all three, Morgan, Iris, Walter, stood there staring coldly. I stumbled out, blood staining the marble floor, with no one stopping me. As I drove away, the mansion's lights faded in my rearview mirror. I was done with them. But this wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. The next day, sitting in my apartment, my head throbbed, the bruise swelling like a toxic flower. I looked in the mirror, seeing a tired man, but my eyes burned with resolve. I began reviewing documents, contracts, bills, and especially my apartment's paperwork. Something was off. The address listed was 5608 Main Street, while mine was 5620. A small error, but it raised suspicions. I contacted Hudson Reigns, a seasoned lawyer who'd worked with my father. We met at Tommy's Diner, a classic American spot with red vinyl booths and the faint smell of bacon. Hudson, with his silver hair and thick glasses, flipped through my documents. He paused, pointing at a page. "This isn't right," he said. "Your apartment's paperwork is forged, and there's more the Highland Village mansion where your family lives. It legally belongs to you." Hudson's words hit like a thunderbolt. My father had left the mansion to me in his will, but my family had concealed the legal transfer. Worse, Hudson uncovered that Morgan and Walter had embezzled millions from Hay Capital, funneling it into secret accounts through shell companies. I sat there gripping my coffee mug, feeling like I'd found the key to a long-locked door. This wasn't just personal, it was criminal. I thought of infamous US financial scandals like Enron right here in Houston, where executives hid billions in debt. My family was no different. What they thought was untouchable wasn't. From there, Hudson and I devised a plan. We prepared eviction notices demanding Morgan Harris and Walter vacate the mansion. Hudson also gathered evidence of their illegal financial dealings, enough to spark a federal investigation. I recalled my father saying, "The truth is the sharpest weapon." We were sharpening that weapon. But before I go on, let me share a few real-life stories to show I'm not alone in this fight. Think of Sarah, a woman I met at a Houston community event. Her parents pressured her to surrender her inheritance to save their failing family business. When she refused, they cut contact and spread rumors that she was selfish. Sarah didn't break. She started her own tech company and is now one of Texas's most respected young entrepreneurs. Her story warmed me like a fire, reminding me that saying no might cost you some people, but it opens the path to rediscovering yourself. Then there's Javier, a friend from East Houston. His brother stole Javier's share of their family restaurant, leaving him with nothing. Instead of endless lawsuits, Javier launched a taco truck called Taco Redemption. His street food is now a Houston icon, and he turned pain into pride. Stories like Sarah's and Javier's showed me that betrayal isn't the end. It's a curve in the road, and you can choose the path to light. Back to my story when the eviction notices were served. Houston seemed to quake. Reporters swarmed the Highland Village mansion, cameras, flashing microphones, pointed at Morgan. He stood before the crowd, trying to stay calm, claiming it was a family misunderstanding. But I knew the truth. Hudson had sent evidence of their secret accounts to the FBI, and soon federal agents stormed Hayes Capital's offices with handcuffs and search warrants. On TV, I saw Morgan and Walter retreat, their forced smiles failing to hide the fear in their eyes. Watching that, I felt an odd peace, not gloating joy, but the sense of justice served. I thought of David in the David and Goliath story. No brute strength needed, just a stone and a sling, in my case, the truth and the law. I sat in my apartment sipping coffee from a chipped mug, watching rain fall outside. Each drop seemed to wash away the years I let my family control me. But the story didn't end with reclaiming the mansion. I faced a crossroads: sell it, pocket millions, and live an easy life, or do something more meaningful. I chose the harder path. Inspired by community hubs like Baker Ripley in Houston, I decided to transform the mansion into the Highland Community Trust, a place offering education, job training, and support for those who need it most. I called contractors, and soon the mansion echoed with hammers, saws, and volunteers' laughter. One day, while clearing debris, I found a silver pocket watch under a tarp. Scratched but still ticking, I recognized it as my father's. It felt like a reminder that time can heal if you give it a chance. Then Clara, my father's former secretary, visited me. She handed me another silver watch, saying he'd given it to her in 1985. "He'd be proud of you," she said, her eyes twinkling. Those watches became symbols of my journey, not for revenge, but for rebuilding. Renovating the mansion was a community effort. Old neighbors who once avoided my gaze at parties now wore work gloves, painted walls, and planted flowers. We turned the grand dining room into a meeting space, Walter's office into a library. Each nail driven into the walls erased a piece of the toxic past. I thought of organizations like Habitat for Humanity, where old homes are reborn to bring hope. This was my version, a legacy built not on money, but on impact. The opening day of Highland Community Trust was unforgettable. Hundreds gathered in the front yard, from kids to seniors, their faces glowing with hope. I held scissors, cut the red ribbon, and applause roared like thunder. Inside, the center buzzed with life. Kids ran through halls. Volunteers served food, and job training classes began. A library named after my father, Walter Hayes, brimmed with community-donated books. The silver pocket watch, now in a glass case, gleamed with the inscription, "A New Beginning." Standing there, I reflected on my journey. This wasn't a victory over my family, it was a victory for what I believed in. I thought of Viktor Frankl, who said life's meaning is found in overcoming suffering. My pain, betrayal, violence, loss led me here. Highland Community Trust isn't just a building. It's proof you can rewrite your story no matter how shattered it once was. But I want you to know this journey isn't just mine. We all have a story. Maybe you're battling a toxic job, a broken relationship, or a buried dream. Start small. Say no when you need to. Find people who lift you up like Hudson did for me. And don't let anyone define your worth. The silver watch in its case keeps ticking, reminding me that time is yours to shape. I want to hear your story. Have you ever found hope in the unlikeliest place? Share it in the comments. And if this story resonates, hit the subscribe button to follow more journeys of overcoming adversity. Together we can turn pain into strength, one step at a time. I'm still here, and I'm listening. I stood at sunset watching Highland Community Trust glow under new lights. Children's laughter and the scent of lavender from the community garden filling the air. Walter's letter sat in my drawer, a small pebble in my shoe, keeping me from full ease. I thought I'd close the past, but life, as I've learned, always finds ways to reopen chapters you thought were done. My story isn't over, and what happens next holds twists even I can't predict. Are you ready to keep going? Because this is where things get more intense than ever. One Saturday morning, as I helped volunteers set up chairs for a career workshop, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number, but I answered, thinking it might be a donor. The voice on the other end was cold, sharp, like a thin blade. "Callum Hayes, you think you can destroy everything and walk away unscathed?" My heart pounded. The caller identified himself as Victor, an old business associate of Morgan's. He said I'd caused major trouble by toppling Hay Capital and someone wanted me to pay. Before I could ask more, he hung up, leaving a chill down my spine. I shared this with Hudson that noon at his office, where the familiar smell of ink and leather lingered. Hudson frowned, tapping his fingers on the desk. Victor could be anyone, he said. Morgan had plenty of shady connections. But you need to be careful, Callum. These people don't play. Hudson suggested hiring a security firm for the center, but I hesitated. Highland Community Trust was a place of peace, not a fortress. Still, I agreed to install security cameras and hire a part-time guard just in case. That night driving home, I noticed a black SUV tailing me through 3 intersections. I tried to stay calm, speeding through Midtown, but it stayed close, a shadow in my rearview mirror. My heart raced. I called Hudson, but he didn't answer. Finally, I drove straight to the police station and the SUV vanished into the dark. I didn't sleep that night. My mind spinning with questions. Who was Victor? And what did someone want? I thought of movies like The Godfather, where all debts are always paid in blood. But this wasn't a movie, this was my life. The next morning, I arrived at the center early, checking the cameras. Nothing unusual, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I decided to tell the volunteers not to scare them, but to keep them vigilant. Tasha, the single mom I mentioned earlier, took my hand, her eyes steady. Callum, we're here for you. If someone wants to hurt this center, they'll have to face our whole community. Her words were a spark warming my heart. I realized Highland Community Trust wasn't just my project, it belonged to everyone who'd poured sweat and hope into it. But the trouble didn't stop. A week later, an anonymous package arrived at the center. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. Watch this and think hard about what you've done. I took it to Hudson and we plugged it into an old offline laptop to avoid viruses. What we saw chilled me, a secretly recorded video from Morgan's birthday party. It showed me before the bottle broke, arguing with Morgan and Iris. But the audio was altered, making it sound like I was threatening them as if I were the aggressor. At the end, a distorted voice said, "Back off, Callum, or the world will see who you really are." It felt like the floor collapsed beneath me. Hudson gripped my shoulder, his voice firm. "This is blackmail," he said. "They want to discredit you, destroy the center before it truly takes off." We took the USC to a tech expert Hudson knew who confirmed the video was manipulated. But the big question remained, who was behind it? Victor Morgan from jail, or an old enemy I didn't even know. I thought of US political scandals like Watergate, where truth was twisted for power. But I wasn't a politician, just a man trying to do right. I resolved not to let fear control me. Instead, I held a press conference at Highland Community Trust, inviting local reporters and the community. At the microphone, I told the truth about the fake video, Victor's threat, and why I built the center. "I'm not perfect," I said, my voice shaky but firm. "But I believe in this place, in these people. If someone wants to take us down, they'll have to face all of us." The crowd cheered, and I saw Tasha Henry and Mia among them, their eyes proud. The conference aired on Houston News, and suddenly, Highland Community Trust wasn't just a community center, it was a symbol of resilience. But the story didn't end there. Days later, I got a call from Rachel Carter, an investigative reporter from the Houston Chronicle. She'd been tracking the Hayes Capital case and had information on Victor. We met at a Vietnamese Phao shop in Bel Air, the aroma of broth easing my tension. Rachel revealed that Victor wasn't Morgan's business partner, but a shady real estate broker who'd helped Morgan launder money through construction projects. "Victor's not acting alone," she said, sliding a stack of documents across the table. "There's a group of investors behind him and they're furious you cut off their cash flow." Rachel's documents were a goldmine: invoices, emails, and even a contract tied to a shell project Hayes Capital had funded. I felt like I was in a thriller, but this was real. I took everything to Hudson, who nearly jumped out of his chair. "This is what we need to end this," he said. We handed the documents to the FBI, and within a week, Victor was arrested at a Dallas hotel. He spilled details on a network of investors who'd used Hayes Capital as an illegal money printer. Each day brought new updates, and I felt like I was running a marathon, exhausted but unable to stop. Just when I thought I'd weathered the storm, another twist hit. One evening, as I locked up the center, Iris appeared at the gate. Not on the phone, but in person, standing under a streetlight wearing a simple sweater instead of a gala gown. She looked different, fragile, almost broken. "Callum," she said, her voice choking, "I need your help." I was stunned. Iris, who'd watched as I was attacked, was now begging me. She said that after Morgan's conviction, Victor's investors had threatened her. They thought she knew where Morgan hid a fortune, millions in offshore accounts the FBI hadn't found. I didn't know if I could trust Iris. Part of me wanted to turn away, but another part remembered she was also Morgan's victim in her own way. I invited her into the center, brewed coffee, and we sat in the library where soft light from bookshelves eased the tension. Iris said she'd found a hidden hard drive in Morgan's safe containing details of the secret accounts. She was terrified, unsure what to do. "I don't want to live like this anymore," she said, tears streaming. "I want to do right for you, for me." It was a moment of tough choice. I thought of my father, who always said, "Kindness is strength, not weakness." I agreed to help Iris on one condition: she had to turn the drive over to the FBI and fully cooperate. She nodded, and we drove to Hudson's office that night. Hudson, despite the late hour, opened the door, and as we explained, he looked at Iris with half suspicion, half hope. "If you're telling the truth," he said, "this could be your chance to make amends." Over the next weeks, Iris worked with the FBI, providing information that led to recovering over $20 million from offshore accounts. She didn't escape consequences, fined and put on probation for her role in Hayes Capital, but she kept her word. One day she visited the center with a box of homemade cookies. "I don't expect you to call me family," she said, "but I hope you see I'm trying." I didn't hug her, but I smiled and took the box. It was a small start. But drama, as I've said, never truly fades. One evening, as I locked the center, a truck pulled up at the gate. Two men stepped out, one of them Walter. He didn't say much, just stared at the building with hateful eyes. "You think you've won, don't you?" he growled. I didn't respond, just gripped my keys tightly. Walter walked away, but that moment reminded me the past never fully vanishes. It waits for its chance to return. I began to see that running the center wasn't just about building a structure, it was about building trust. I held a community meeting, inviting ideas for new programs. A standout came from Diane, a retired teacher who suggested a mentoring program for at-risk teens. We launched it, and I still recall Jamal's smile when he got his first college scholarship. These small victories, like Jamal's, Tasha's, or Mia's, fueled me to keep going. One day, while shelving books in the library, Iris called. I hesitated but answered. Her voice trembled, no trace of her old arrogance. "Callum, we need to talk," she said. She wanted to meet, saying she regretted what happened. Part of me wanted to hang up, but another part, the part that remembered when we were family, agreed. We met at a downtown Houston cafe, the air filled with the scent of waffles and coffee. Iris looked worn, no red lipstick or sharp gaze. She apologized, saying Morgan pressured her into the apartment scheme. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said, "but I want you to know I was wrong." I listened but didn't rush to respond. I thought of Desmond Tutu, who said forgiveness isn't forgetting, but freeing yourself from resentment's burden. I didn't forgive Iris then, but I said I'd think about it. That meeting showed me my journey wasn't just about building a community center, but reconciling with myself. I didn't need my old family to feel whole, but I didn't want to carry hate either. In the months that followed, Highland Community Trust grew. We started a community garden where kids learned to grow tomatoes and sunflowers. We held outdoor movie nights with people bringing camp chairs and blankets to watch films like The Sandlot, Under the Stars. Each event, each smile was a step further from the past's darkness. But I knew my story and the sentence wasn't finished. One morning, checking emails, I learned Morgan had been convicted of embezzlement, facing 7 years in prison, and Hayes Capital was officially bankrupt. The news didn't bring the joy I'd expected. Instead, I felt a strange sadness for what we once had and what could have been. I pulled the silver pocket watch from my pocket, tracing its smooth surface. My father gave it to me on my 30th birthday, saying, "Time is the only thing we truly own." Now I understood him. I did something I never thought I would. I wrote Morgan a letter. I didn't send it, but writing it helped me sort my thoughts. I told him about the center, the people it changed, and how I found a new family. I didn't expect a reply, but I needed to close that chapter. It's a lesson I want to share sometimes. Forgiveness isn't for others' comfort, but for your own freedom. Highland Community Trust is now a vital part of Houston. We added coding classes for teens, a mental health support program, and an annual music festival called Harmony Fest. Each step feels like honoring my father, who believed money only mattered when it did good. I began sharing my story at events from universities to community centers. Each time I saw the eyes of listeners, people fighting their own battles. One day, while guiding students through the center, I received a handwritten letter from Walter. He wrote from a small Oklahoma town where he worked on a farm. The letter was brief but sincere. He apologized for attacking me, saying he'd been swept up in Morgan's ambitions. "You did what we couldn't," he wrote. "Thanks for showing me another way." I read it 3 times, then tucked it away. I wasn't sure I could trust Walter, but I chose to believe people can change. My story, like the silver watch in its case, keeps going. Each day at Highland Community Trust is a chance to build, heal, and connect. I think of you watching this, maybe facing your own challenges. Perhaps you're dealing with a toxic relative, a shattered dream, or just feeling lost. I'm here to say you're not alone. Find those who believe in you, like Hudson Tasha or Clara in my story. Seize your time and write the story you want to tell. I'll keep building Highland Community Trust, and I hope you'll follow this journey. Leave your story in the comments. I read everyone. If this inspires you, share it, hit subscribe, and together we'll turn our wounds into stars. I'm still here, and I'm listening. A photo of me at Highland Community Trust, taken from an unseen camera angle, came with a threat. The game isn't over. It felt like being thrust into a maze with no exit. I stood in the center's library light from the silver pocket watch, reflecting on the walls, feeling time challenge me. But I've learned one thing: when facing darkness, you don't run, you light a torch. My story, like that watch, keeps ticking, and what's next will glue you to the screen. Stay with me, because the twists ahead will leave you unable to look away. After meeting with Hudson, Rachel, and the volunteers, I decided not to let fear rule. But I wasn't naive. The photo meant someone was watching and I needed to know who. Hudson suggested contacting Elena, a cybersecurity expert who'd helped him with a past fraud case. Elena, a 30-something woman with green-dyed hair and storm-like energy, arrived at the center the next morning. She plugged in her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. If someone sent that email, they left a trace, she said, her eyes glinting like a hunter's. Within hours, Elena traced the email source, a hidden server in Dallas, linked to a shell company called Silver Point Holdings. The name sent a shiver through me. Silver echoed the watch as if the mastermind was taunting me. Elena dug deeper and found Silver Point Holdings tied to a new figure, Cynthia Brooks, a real estate investor who'd worked with Richard Delaney, one of those arrested for plotting against me. Cynthia hadn't been named in the prior investigation, making her a dangerous shadow. Rachel Carter, the Houston Chronicle reporter, provided more. Cynthia was a sharp woman known in Houston's elite for lavish parties and manipulation. She's like a spider, Rachel said, sipping coffee at a Heights cafe. She weaves a web, and people only notice when it's too late. I felt like I was playing chess with an invisible opponent. Cynthia might be behind the photo, but what was her motive? I thought of films like The Firm, where powerful figures hid secrets with lies. I bolstered the center's security but also launched a bold plan to lure Cynthia out. With Elena's help, I sent a fake email from an anonymous account posing as an investor interested in buying the center's land. I mentioned hearing about Silver Point Holdings and requested a meeting. Hudson objected, calling it playing with fire, but I knew we had to act before Cynthia struck. While awaiting a reply, an unexpected event shook the center. One afternoon, as I helped Mia repaint a playground mural, a group of local teens led by a boy named Diego ran in shouting they'd found something odd in the garden. I rushed over, spotting a small metal box partially buried under lavender. My heart raced. Was this another threat, like the broken watch? I called the police, who opened it under careful watch. Inside wasn't a bomb or weapon, but yellow documents and a handwritten letter from my father dated 1989. It read, "If this is found, give it to Callum. This is the truth about Hayes Capital." I trembled reading the papers. They revealed my father had suspected Morgan of embezzling early on. He'd hired a secret auditor who uncovered shady deals, but before he could act, he died of a heart attack. My father's letter ended, "Callum, you're the only one I trust to do right. Protect our legacy." It felt like he was speaking across time, and silent tears fell. But I also realized these documents were a weapon. If Cynthia or anyone else was tied to Morgan's old deals, they'd want these papers gone. I took them to Hudson, who nearly leaped from his chair. "This is the silver bullet," he said, eyes gleaming. "If we go public, it ties everything Morgan Delaney, maybe Cynthia." But before we could act, my fake email got a response. Someone claiming to be a Silver Point representative agreed to meet at a fancy River Oaks restaurant on Friday night. I knew it was a trap, but also a chance to face Cynthia. Hudson, Elena, and Rachel planned it. Elena would hack the restaurant's cameras to record. Rachel would be nearby to tape audio, and Hudson would coordinate with the FBI for safety. That night, I entered the restaurant, heart pounding but outwardly calm. The air smelled of grilled steak and red wine, chandeliers casting a dim glow. Cynthia Brooks waited at a corner table in a fitted black dress, her blonde hair flawless. She smiled, but her eyes were like knives. "Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice sweet but cold. "I hear you want to do business." I played along, feigning interest in selling the land, but noticed her glance at her wristwatch, a silver one identical to my father's. Coincidence? I doubted it. The conversation stretched and I stalled to give Elena and Rachel time to gather evidence. Cynthia revealed she wanted the center's land for a luxury resort and was willing to pay any price for it. But then she leaned forward, voice low, "Or you could hand it over for free, and I'll ensure photos like the one I sent you never hit the internet." My blood surged, but I stayed cool. "What do you mean?" I asked, feigning surprise. She smirked, showing me another photo on her phone, this time of me and Iris taken at our cafe meeting. "What will the world think, knowing you're working with a criminal?" she said, referencing Iris's past. That's when I struck. I pulled out a copy of my father's letter and placed it on the table. "What do you know about this?" I asked, locking eyes. Cynthia froze, her smile vanishing. She tried to stay composed, but her hand trembled, touching her wineglass. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice faltering. I knew I'd hit a nerve. I stood saying I'd consider her offer and left feeling her gaze like daggers on my back. Outside, Rachel rushed up, whispering she'd recorded everything. Elena confirmed the cameras caught Cynthia holding the letter, proof she knew about the documents. Hudson, waiting in a car with an FBI agent, nodded approvingly. "You did it," he said. But I knew the game wasn't over. Cynthia wasn't one to give up, and my father's letter might lead to bigger secrets. The next day, Rachel published a Houston Chronicle article exposing Cynthia's ties to Hayes Capital's old deals, including snippets of our talk. The story exploded and Cynthia vanished from Houston, but not before sending me a final text. "You've started a war you can't win. I wasn't scared. I'd faced Morgan Walter Victor and a network of investors. If Cynthia wanted war, I was ready." But then another twist floored me. One morning, as I prepped for a career workshop, Tasha ran in, face pale. "Callum, someone's in the library saying they knew your father." I raced over, heart pounding, and found an older man, about 70, in a worn but neat suit, standing by the bookshelves. He introduced himself as Leonard Price, the secret auditor my father hired in 1989. "I left after he died," Leonard said, voice low. "I was scared, but seeing your center on the news, I knew I had to come back." Leonard brought an old suitcase packed with more documents on Hayes Capital's illegal dealings. But one page stunned me, a contract signed by my mother showing she knew of Morgan's actions but stayed silent. It felt like the ground crumbled. My mother, who I'd always seen as a victim of family ambition, had a role. Leonard explained she was manipulated by Morgan, but it didn't ease the pain. That night, alone in my office, I stared at an old family photo, Dad, Mom, Morgan and me, smiling before the Highland Village mansion. It felt like losing a piece of memory, but I also realized truth, however painful, is the only way forward. I decided to publicize Leonard's documents, not to smear my mother, but to show even the best people can err. I held a press conference sharing my parents' story and calling for a future built on honesty. The community's response was overwhelming. Hundreds sent letters sharing their own tales of family mistakes and redemption. A woman named Gloria wrote that she forgave her brother for cheating her in a business deal, and now they run a bakery in Katy together. These stories reminded me that Highland Community Trust isn't just my healing place, it's for all of us. But drama never truly ends. One morning, prepping for an art workshop, Iris burst in, face ashen. "Callum, you need to see this." She showed me a phone displaying a YouTube video posted by an anonymous account. It showed me secretly filmed talking with Kane at the center. The audio was edited to make it sound like I agreed to sell the land. Comments below were vicious, calling me a community betrayer. My heart sank. This was Kane's revenge, and it hit hard. I called Elena, who confirmed the video was fake, but the damage was done. Some volunteers grew skeptical, their trusting glances turning wary. But Tasha stood up at a community meeting, holding my hand before the crowd. "We know Callum," she said. "We know he's fought for us. Don't let a fake video divide us." Her words were medicine, and I decided to fight back. I held a live Facebook press conference telling the full truth about Kane, the fake video, and my father's legacy. I held up the silver watch for the world to see. "This is why I fight," I said. "Not for money, but for the people here." The live stream drew thousands, and the community rallied stronger than ever. Volunteers led by Mia launched a response video campaign sharing how the center changed their lives. Mia's video showing her painting the mural went viral, hitting millions of views. Kane, under pressure from public outcry, and the FBI, was arrested at his Austin home, charged with extortion and money laundering. When the news broke, the center threw a huge party with music, tacos, and fireworks. I stood amid the crowd watching people dance, feeling like my father was smiling somewhere. But the story didn't stop. A week after the celebration, I got a call from Emma Walter's 7-year-old daughter. She wanted to start a book club at the center, inspired by the library named for her grandfather. I invited her and her mom, and when they arrived, Emma ran to hug me. "Thanks for helping my dad," she said, eyes shining. Walter, now working at an Oklahoma auto shop, sent a note. "You gave me a chance to start over. I won't waste it. I'm not sure I can fully forgive Walter, but seeing Emma, I knew I'd done right." Highland Community Trust is now a beacon not just for Houston, but for anyone who believes in unity's power. We added a teen mentoring program, a food bank serving thousands monthly, and an annual cultural festival, Houston Harmony. Each day I walk into the center, see the silver watch in its case, and feel my father nodding approval. But I know the past's shadows, undiscovered secrets, unseen enemies could return. If they do, I'll be ready with the community behind me. I think of you watching, fighting your own battles. Maybe you're facing a betraying relative, a broken dream, or the sense the world's against you. I'm here to say you're stronger than you think. Find your spark, however small, and let it guide you. Highland Community Trust is my spark proof that from wreckage you can build something beautiful. Share your story in the comments. I want to know how you overcame, how you found hope. Hit subscribe, share this video, and together we'll keep writing stories of resilience, of families built not by blood, but by love and trust. I'm still here, and I won't stop. How will you write your next chapter? Tell me, because I'm listening. The silver pocket watch found in Cynthia Brooks's suitcase, engraved with my father's name, is with the FBI, but it haunts me. Each time I see the watch in its case at Highland Community Trust, it's like the past whispers, as if my father left puzzle pieces I haven't solved. Cynthia's arrested, but her final message, "You've started a war you can't win," echoes in my mind. I thought I was ready for anything but life, as I've learned through years of drama always surprises. Are you still here? Because this story is about to escalate with deeper secrets, new threats, and moments that will leave you breathless. Keep following because I promise what's coming will keep you glued.